And I'll say this right at the outset. I don't think I'm any different than any of my former colleagues. Every Michigan State player has an added advantage because he's coached by Mark D'Antonio and comes from that program. Michigan State is the good housekeeping seal of approval. There are programs, a handful around America where you say, this kid will step right into our program and know exactly what to do all the time. So that's a benefit for all of the Spartan players.
I want to talk about the Michigan State team for a second. Defensively, the last 2 years, what Mark D'Antonio and Pat Narduzzi's defense has done, ranking them on the top 10 in scoring defense, total defense, and rushing defense. Only Alabama and Florida State can also make that plane. How difficult is it for them to maintain that level of play when you got guys graduating every year or leaving early for the pros?
It's a credit to the coaching. It really is, to Mark D'Antonio, to Pat Narduzzi, because they run a lot of pro principles. And what we know in the college football, you have the 20-hour-a-week rule. So it's more or less about their scheme, how it's introduced during spring practices, how it's reintroduced during training camp, and how they're able to execute all those schemes during the regular season. So to me, it's about coaching style and teaching very complex schemes, but yet no other team is doing it in college football. And they're very complex. They execute them tremendously. And quite honestly, other college teams, they're just not prepared for those type of blitz zones and all the different fronts and coverages that Pat Narduzzi throws at opposing offenses. So, I credit strictly to coaching. Granted, you need great players, but it's the scheme and the style and how those young men are taught to execute it that really puts that defense above others.
Last year, 7-6 certainly didn't meet the preseason expectations, but so close with the 5 losses by a combined total of 13 points. But the back-to-back bowl wins, some momentum carrying into this spring. Program is really a lot closer to competing for a championship again than it is being far away.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, it comes down to coaches, pounding the pavement, recruiting, the pro philosophies, both offensively and defensively. And then, again, young players coming up through the pipeline. I mean, Michigan State lost a lot of players when you look at especially the offensive leadership of Kirk Cousins, Keyshawn Martin, B.J. Cunningham, and then all these young players were thrust into playing a significant amount of time. Andrew Maxwell and B.J. Fowler and all these young receivers, and there is a learning curve. There is a learning curve where those players got to get out there and really understand what it's like playing on game day. And I think they're through that right now. Michigan State is past that. They've always had a championship caliber defense. Now to bring the offensive accountability with these young players, now their second year playing a full season should just be very fruitful for Michigan State.
Talked to Kirk Cousins earlier today, and he said he looks back on his experience last year here at the Combine with mixed emotions. People really have a difficult time comprehending what those guys do go through this week.
It's overwhelming. I mean, it never ends. So from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep at 11 p.m., 12 p.m. at night, it is nonstop football. And it's all done with a purpose, from the medical exams to the interviews to dealing with the media here out front. But make no mistake about it, first and foremost, it's about the medical evaluations of these players down here at the Combine. But it can be a very dizzying process if you've never been to it. It's probably one of the craziest job interviews I was ever a part of, and I'm sure Kirk Cousins would say the same thing. And it is an eye-opener, and it really lets you know as a player that you are entering a business. This is a business when you talk about the National Football League. These teams are in the business of winning, and they are trying to acquire the best investments that they can in these players. And I think that, for a lot of players, at times can be overwhelming, but if you understand it and you understand the process, it can be, obviously, you can go through it undaunted as well.